The alien king stood alone on the highest balcony of the royal palace, looking out over the glowing city of Lethera. Tall crystal towers reflected the light of 3 moons, and airships moved slowly through the sky like silent fish. From the outside, the kingdom looked peaceful and strong. Inside the king's heart, however, there was a wound that never healed. It had been 7 long cycles since his youngest daughter, Princess Althea, disappeared. Althea had been curious, kind, and far too brave for her own safety. She believed the galaxy could be understood, not feared. When she asked to join a diplomatic journey beyond their borders, the king had refused at first. She was too important, too loved, but she had smiled and said she needed to see the galaxy with her own eyes, not just from stories and maps. That voyage never returned. The escort ships were found destroyed near an unstable star corridor. No escape pods. No signals. No bodies. The council had declared her lost, and the galaxy moved on. But the king never did. Every night, he stood on the balcony and stared into the stars, wondering if his daughter was still alive somewhere out there. He never allowed hope to die. He simply hid it. Far away from the shining palace, on the edge of known space, hope struggled to survive. Princess Althea no longer looked like royalty. Her once bright ceremonial clothing was replaced by patched survival fabric. Her hands were rough, her skin marked by years of harsh environments. She had survived crashes, hunger, cold, and creatures that wanted her dead. The escape pod from her destroyed ship had taken her to a forgotten system. Far from trade routes or help, for years, she survived alone. She learned how to repair broken tools, how to hunt strange creatures, and how to read unfamiliar stars. She sent distress signals whenever she could, but no one answered. Over time, she accepted a painful truth. Her people believed she was dead. Still, she refused to give up. One day, while scavenging parts from an old wreck floating near a dying planet, her scanner picked up an unexpected reading. A small ship. Human design. Humans were not common in this region. They were known as survivors and traders, not conquerors. Many advanced species underestimated them because their technology was simple compared to galactic powers. Althea had heard stories humans were stubborn, adaptable, and strangely loyal. The human ship was damaged, barely holding together. It drifted close to the wreck, engines sputtering. Althea felt fear and hope at the same time. Contact with anyone could mean rescue or danger. She prepared her defensive tool, stepped onto the outer platform, and waited. The airlock of the human ship opened slowly. A tall human man stepped out, wearing a worn exploration suit. His movements were careful, not aggressive. When he saw her, he froze in place. They stared at each other across the cold silence of space. The human raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon. Through open comms, his voice came through calm, cautious, and surprised. "I didn't expect to find anyone alive out here," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you." Althea did not lower her guard. "You are far from human space," she replied. "Why are you here?" The human let out a small breath. "Exploration. Salvage. Bad luck," he said. "My ship took damage in a starstorm. I saw the wreck and hoped to find parts." She studied him carefully. He looked tired, injured, but determined. He could have tried to steal or attack. Instead, he spoke honestly. "My name is Elias," he added. "If you need help, I can try." It had been years since anyone had offered her help without asking for something in return. After a long moment, Althea lowered her tool. Their cooperation began carefully. Elias helped repair her failing equipment. In return, she guided him through the dangerous debris field. Over time, she realized something important: Elias had even fewer resources than she did. His ship was barely operational. He survived by skill, patience, and refusing to quit. When she finally told him the truth that she was a lost princess from a powerful alien kingdom, he did not bow or panic. He simply nodded. "Then getting you home matters," he said. Those words struck her deeply. Together, They worked to fix Elias's ship enough for travel. The journey would be long and dangerous, but it was possible. For the first time in years, Althea allowed herself to imagine home. The palace, her father, the balcony under the 3 moons. As they prepared to leave the system, hostile signals suddenly appeared. Pirate vessels, alien scavengers who hunted lone ships. They saw easy prey. Elias did not hesitate. He powered up what weapons he had, positioning his ship between the pirates and Althea's escape craft. His movements were quick and smart, using the debris field as cover. He did not overpower the pirates. He outthought them. He caused confusion, false signals, and timed bursts that made the pirates believe a larger force was arriving. They retreated. When silence returned, Althea stared at the human in disbelief. "You could have escaped alone," she said. Elias shrugged. Leaving someone behind didn't feel right. Something changed between them then. Not romance, something deeper. Trust. They set course for her home system. Days later, as the human ship crossed into royal territory, massive defense fleets appeared. Weapons locked on instantly. Automated warnings filled the comms. "Unknown vessel. You are entering restricted space. Power down or be destroyed." Althea rushed to the controls and transmitted an emergency signal, using royal encryption codes she had memorized as a child. "This is Princess Althea of Lethira," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am alive. I request immediate safe passage." For a long, terrifying moment, there was no response. Then the defense fleet went silent. On the palace balcony, the alien king felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. The silence after Princess Althea's signal felt endless. Inside the human ship, warning lights flickered softly. Elias kept his hands away from the controls, just as the defense fleet had ordered. Outside the viewport, massive alien warships surrounded them, their weapons powerful enough to erase the small human vessel in a single moment. Althea stood beside him, her posture straight, her expression calm. But inside, she felt the weight of years pressing down on her. This was her home space. These were her people, and yet everything depended on whether they believed her. Then the silence broke. "Royal identification confirmed," a voice announced over the comms. It was careful, almost stunned. "All units, stand down. Escort the vessel to the capital immediately." Elias let out a breath he did not realize he was holding. The warships moved aside, forming a clear path. Smaller escort ships took position around the human vessel, guiding it forward. The moment felt unreal. Althea closed her eyes for a second, steadying herself. She was truly going home. As they traveled deeper into royal territory, Elias noticed how different everything looked. Clean trade routes, organized fleets, advanced technology far beyond anything humans used. He felt small but not afraid. He had come this far by trusting his instincts, and they had not failed him yet. At the palace, the arrival caused shock across the city. Alarms sounded not of danger, but of announcement. Crowds gathered in open plazas. Officials rushed through halls. Guards lined every platform. No one had expected this day to come. When the human ship finally landed in the royal hangar, the doors opened slowly. Althea stepped out first. For a moment, no one moved. Then an elder official recognized her markings, her posture, her eyes. His voice trembled as he spoke her name. That single word spread like fire. "She lives." The hangar filled with movement. Guards knelt. Officials bowed. Some stared in disbelief. Others wept openly. Althea felt her legs weaken, not from fear, but from emotion. She had survived so much, but this was harder than any battle. Elias stepped out behind her. The reaction to him was very different. Weapons shifted. Guards stiffened. Whispers moved through the crowd. A human here, now, standing beside the lost princess. No one knew what to make of it. Althea turned and placed herself slightly in front of Elias, a silent but clear gesture of protection. "He is under my protection," she said firmly. "He saved my life." That was enough for now. They were escorted through the palace halls toward the throne chamber. Elias walked quietly, observing everything. The palace was beautiful and intimidating, filled with history and power. He felt like an outsider in every way. Still, he kept his head up. He had not come here by accident. The great doors opened. The alien king sat upon his throne. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, always ending in disappointment. But now, there she was, his daughter, alive, changed, but unmistakably hers. For a long moment, the king did not move. Then he stood. The entire chamber held its breath as the king descended the steps, ignoring protocol. When he reached Althea, his strength finally broke. He placed his hands on her shoulders, as if afraid she might vanish. "My child," he said, his voice low and unsteady. Althea bowed her head, then embraced him. The king closed his eyes, holding her as if the universe itself could not pull her away again. The court watched in silence. No one dared interrupt. When they finally separated, the king looked at her carefully, seeing the marks of survival, the strength she had earned. Pride replaced grief. Then his gaze shifted to Elias. The room changed instantly. Guards tightened their grip. Advisors whispered urgently. The king's eyes narrowed, not with hatred, but with caution. "Who is this?" the king asked. Althea answered before Elias could. "This is Elias, a human explorer. He found me when I was lost, and chose to protect me. Without him, I would not be standing here." The king studied the human closely. Elias felt the weight of that gaze, heavy with authority and responsibility. "You crossed royal space without permission," the king said. "You brought an unknown presence into my domain." Elias nodded once. Yes, there was no fear in his voice. No challenge either. Just honesty. "I did not know who she was when I found her," Elias continued. "I only knew she was alone and needed help." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some nobles stepped forward, suspicion clear on their faces. They spoke of risk, of manipulation, of humans seeking advantage. They questioned his motives, his timing, his presence. Elias did not interrupt. When they finished, the king raised a hand for silence. "You are far from your people," the king said to Elias. "Why help my daughter? What did you expect in return?" "Oh," Elias thought for a moment before answering. "I didn't expect anything," he said. "I've been stranded before, alone. If someone had walked away from me, I wouldn't be here today. I did what I hoped someone would do for me." The room fell quiet. That answer did not fit the usual stories told about humans. It was simple, honest, hard to argue with. Still, doubt remained. The king ordered that Elias be given guarded quarters until a full inquiry could be completed. It was not a punishment but not trust either. Althea wanted to argue, but Elias gently shook his head. "It's okay," he said quietly. "This is your home. I understand." Over the next days, the palace buzzed with tension. Althea reunited with her people. But she was no longer the same. She spoke of survival, of cooperation, of learning from those considered weak. Some listened. Others resisted. Elias, meanwhile, waited. He did not complain. He repaired small devices in his quarters using scraps. He spoke politely to guards. He learned the palace routines. When questioned, he answered truthfully every time. Then the threat came. Without warning, a hostile force attacked the outer defenses. A long-hidden enemy had been watching the kingdom, waiting for weakness. They believed the recent chaos made the perfect opening. Alarms echoed through the palace. Defense systems struggled. Confusion spread. The enemy used tactics unfamiliar to the alien commanders. Elias saw the problem immediately. "They're using signal shadows," he said to a nearby officer. "Your sensors are too clean. They're hiding in the gaps." The officer hesitated. "You understand our systems?" "Enough," Elias replied. "If you let me help." There was no time to debate. Elias was rushed to the command center. He worked fast, adjusting sensor ranges, predicting enemy movement based on patterns humans had learned through hard experience. The defenses adapted. The enemy lost their advantage. The attack was repelled. When the danger passed, silence filled the command center. The king looked at the human not as a stranger now, but as something else. An ally. From the shadows of the palace, Elias had stepped forward not with force, but with understanding, and the king began to realize that his daughter had not returned alone by chance. She had returned with proof that the galaxy still held surprises and that humanity was one of them. Though the enemy had been pushed back, tension hung in every corridor. Guards doubled their patrols, commanders argued over strategy, advisors whispered about hidden dangers and unseen enemies. The return of the lost princess should have been a time of celebration. Yet uncertainty ruled the kingdom. At the center of it all stood Elias, the human who did not belong, yet could no longer be ignored. The alien king summoned the High Council. They gathered in a wide circular chamber beneath a glowing dome that showed the stars above. Each council member represented a powerful house or fleet. Some were calm, others were clearly unhappy. "The human interfered in our defense systems," one noble said sharply. "That alone is unacceptable. He saved our outer defenses," another replied. "We would have lost 3 stations without his changes. This proves nothing." A third voice cut in. "Humans are unpredictable. Today he helps. Tomorrow he could betray us." The king listened in silence. Princess Althea stood near the edge of the chamber, her hands clenched. She had survived isolation, hunger, and fear, but this was different. This was politics. And politics could be cruel. Elias waited outside under guard, unaware of the exact words being spoken about him. He knew only that his future rested in the hands of people who did not trust him. When the king finally spoke, the chamber fell silent. "We will test him," the king said slowly. "Not with words, but with responsibility." The council reacted immediately. "You would place a human in a position of trust?" one demanded. "I will place him where his true nature cannot hide," the king replied. "If he is what my daughter claims, he will prove it. If not, we will know." The decision was made. Elias was brought before the king later that day. He knelt as protocol required, though it was unfamiliar to him. The king studied him carefully, not as a ruler judging a subject, but as a father judging someone who had changed his family forever. "You have already acted to defend this kingdom," the king said. "Now you will be asked to do so again openly." Elias met the king's gaze. "If I can help, I will." The task was dangerous. A damaged defense station near the outer edge of the system had gone silent during the recent attack. Long-range scans suggested enemy interference, or worse, a trap. Sending a full fleet risked escalation. Sending no one risked losing critical defenses. The king gave Elias command authority over a small mixed-species team. It was not an honor. It was a risk. Some saw it as a chance for the human to fail. Others as a chance for him to prove himself. The team departed within hours. Aboard the small patrol ship, tension was thick. The alien officers did not hide their doubts. Elias felt them watching his every move, waiting for a mistake. He did not give orders loudly. He did not demand respect. He listened. He asked questions. He studied their systems. He adjusted his plans to fit their strengths. Slowly, resistance turned into cautious cooperation. When they reached the silent station, the danger became clear. The enemy had boarded it, not in large numbers, but carefully, disabling systems and waiting. They expected panic. They expected force. Elias did not give them either. He shut down all external signals, making the patrol ship appear dead. Using knowledge gained from years of survival, he predicted enemy movement patterns. He divided the team into small units, each with a clear goal. No unnecessary risk. No wasted motion. When the enemy realized they were not alone, it was already too late. The station was reclaimed with minimal damage. More importantly, Elias uncovered something disturbing, evidence that the enemy had inside knowledge of royal defense schedules. There was a leak. The return journey was quiet. When Elias presented his findings to the king, the reaction was immediate and serious. Investigations began at once. The threat was larger than anyone had thought, and the human had been right. For the first time, the High Council had no arguments left. Still, trust is not built in a single victory. That night, as the palace slept, the enemy struck again, this time with precision. A targeted assault hit the royal district. Alarms screamed. Energy shields flared. Chaos erupted. In the palace halls, Princess Althea was rushed from her chambers by guards, but the attack was not random. The enemy had learned. They aimed for the future of the throne. A breach opened near the inner corridors. Elias was already moving. He had been awake, studying star maps and communication logs. When the alarm sounded, he did not wait for orders. He ran toward the danger. In the narrow corridors, confusion ruled. Guards fought bravely but were pushed back by advanced weapons and unfamiliar tactics. Elias saw the pattern immediately. "They're trying to divide you," he shouted. "Fall back, draw them into the junction." Some hesitated. Then they listened. The enemy advanced, confident, aggressive, and walked straight into a trap. Using emergency controls, Elias sealed passages, cut lights, and forced close combat where the enemy's advantage vanished. He coordinated defenders through short, clear commands. No panic, no wasted movement. When an explosion rocked the corridor, Elias shielded a fallen guard without thinking, taking the impact against his suit. Pain flared, but he stayed on his feet. The attackers were driven back. The palace held. In the aftermath, silence filled the royal chamber once more. The king stood before the gathered court, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Elias. "You placed yourself in danger for my daughter," the king said. Again, Elias shook his head slightly. "I placed myself in danger for the people next to me. That's how my kind survives." The words carried weight. This time, the king did not hesitate. Before the court, he raised his hand. "By my authority," the king declared, "Elias of Earth is no longer a guest under guard. He is recognized as an ally of this kingdom." The chamber reacted, some with shock, others with relief. Princess Althea felt something loosen in her chest. Not victory, but validation. Later, alone on the palace balcony, the king stood beside his daughter. The stars stretched endlessly before them. "You changed," the king said quietly. "So did the galaxy," Althea replied. He looked back toward the palace, where a human now walked freely among alien nobles and soldiers. "Your companion is unusual," the king admitted. "Not because he is human, but because he does not seek power." Althea smiled softly. "That is why he is strong." Far below, Elias watched the stars, unaware of the full weight of what he had become. He had not come seeking recognition. Yet, step by step, through courage, reason, and choice, he had earned something far rarer: trust. And the enemy watching from the darkness of space now understood a dangerous truth. Humanity was no longer a small, quiet presence in the galaxy. It was standing at the heart of a kingdom, and it was not going away. The kingdom of Lethera woke to a new reality. The attacks had stopped, but the truth they revealed could not be ignored. The enemy was not a passing threat. They had watched, studied, and waited. They knew the old ways of the kingdom and believed those ways would never change. They were wrong. At the center of that change stood a human. Elias walked the palace halls freely now, though he did so quietly, without pride. Guards no longer watched him with suspicion. Some nodded in respect. Others asked questions. He answered them all with patience. He never acted as if he owned the trust he had earned. Princess Althea noticed this more than anyone. She had returned home as a survivor, not as the sheltered royal she once was. She saw her people clearly now, their strengths, their fears, and their habits. And she saw something else as well. The kingdom had grown comfortable. Humans had not. The king called for a final council session. This time, the tone was different. The nobles still held power, but certainty no longer lived in their voices. The galaxy had changed, and they had felt it directly. "The enemy will return," the king said calmly. "Not tomorrow, not next cycle, but they will return stronger." The council agreed. "Our defenses are advanced," one commander said, "but they rely on predictability." The king turned his gaze to Elias. "You have seen the galaxy from the edges," he said. Not from thrones or command decks, but from broken ships and empty space. Speak. All eyes turned to the human. Elias paused, choosing his words carefully. You don't need more weapons, he said. You need flexibility. Your systems are powerful, but they expect enemies to behave logically. Real enemies don't. Some nobles frowned. Elias continued, steady and respectful. Humans survive because we plan for failure. We expect things to break. We train people to act without orders when needed. You don't need to become human, but you can learn from how we survive. The room was silent. Then Princess Althea stepped forward. He is right, she said. I survived because I adapted, because I learned to accept help from those I was taught to overlook. Her words carried weight not just as a princess, but as proof. The king made his decision. A joint defense initiative was formed, alien technology guided by human adaptability. Elias was offered a permanent position as an advisor. It was the greatest honor the kingdom could give. Elias declined. The room reacted at once. I am honored, Elias said quickly, raising a hand. Truly. But I am not meant to sit in palaces. I belong where things break, where people need help before systems can respond. The king studied him closely. You would walk away from status and protection? The king asked. Elias nodded. I would walk forward, just not from a throne. For a moment, the king said nothing. Then he smiled. Very well, he said. You will not serve this kingdom as a subject. The king rose from his throne. You will serve it as a bridge. The decree echoed through the chamber. Elias would be recognized as an independent human envoy, free to travel, to warn, to assist, and to speak for humanity when needed. No chains, no commands. Only trust. Elias bowed deeply. That night, the palace held a quiet gathering, not a celebration, but a moment of acknowledgement. The king stood beside his daughter under the 3 moons. I thought I lost you forever, he said softly. You lost the girl I was, Althea replied. But I came back as someone stronger. He nodded. Because of him? Because of survival, she said. He was part of that. Across the terrace, Elias prepared his ship. It was repaired now, still simple, still human, but ready. Althea approached him. You're leaving, she said. For now, Elias replied. The galaxy is restless. Someone needs to listen before the next disaster starts. She looked at him, searching his face. When I was lost, she said quietly, I believed my story had ended. Elias shook his head. Stories don't end when people survive. They change. She smiled faintly. So will we meet again? Elias met her gaze. The galaxy is smaller than it pretends to be. They shared a moment of silence, not of romance, not of promise, but of understanding. The ship lifted off smoothly, disappearing into the stars. The king watched until it was gone. A single human, he said, walked into our grief and changed our future. Althea followed the ship's fading light. Not because he was powerful, she said, but because he chose not to walk away. In the cycles that followed, stories spread, of a human who stood between fleets without fear, of a kingdom that adapted instead of breaking, of alliances formed not by force, but by trust. Other powers noticed. Humanity was no longer a footnote in galactic records. They were survivors, connectors, the ones who showed up when hope was thin. And in the royal archives of Lathira, the story of the lost princess ended not with tragedy but with return, not just of a daughter, but of a truth the galaxy would never forget. That sometimes, what comes back from the void is not what was taken. It is something stronger. The end.